We are on the record. The time is 11:24 a.m.
Okay, thank you. Madam Court Reporter, could you please read back Sheriff Stevens' last answer to the question?
I feel that our obligation is to take all the parties' information, the good, bad, and indifferent, present it to the state, and we've developed over time that we have the opportunity to PC, to arrest somebody on probable cause. But we worked over the years in my 30-year career to the point now we consult with the prosecutors prior to charging because of and especially in a profile cases such as this, that we don't hastily charge and we're all on the same page.
Okay. Sir, so based on your last answer, I've asked you to go to Exhibit 1 and go to page 34.
Exhibit 2?
Exhibit 2, excuse me, you're right, and page 34. That's 28, so you keep going a few more.
Confusing with the 34 on the bottom.
I'm sorry, it's 34 is on top. It would be 57 on the bottom.
34, 38.
Yes. Are you familiar with a person named Fred DiLoretto?
No, sir.
Okay. Now, you knew that when Ms. Chandler first reported this incident to one of your deputies, they downloaded her phone. Did you ever go and look through the texts that were on her phone?
No, sir.
Did you ever direct a deputy to look at that evidence?
That's the deputy's and detective's responsibility to do so.
Okay. So in regards to your answer you just gave us, I wanted to go through some of the corresponding texts between Ms. Chandler and Mr. DiLoretto that are here. If you will look at the text on the top of page 34, there is a banter back and forth between Mr. DiLoretto and Ms. Chandler. Do you see that?
Okay.
I have your back, and I know I don't know him. Since he had your front, you see that?
Okay.
Okay, so if you go through this, on the second page, the next page, on April 23rd, Mr. DiLoretto tells Ms. Chandler, call him and talk to him and ask him, and her question is the sheriff. You see that?
Okay.
Sure, you're buds with him, aren't you? And her response is yes. Okay. And if you turn to the next page.
Is there a question in here yet? Because I want to object to the form that this is speculation and calls for opinion.
Well, I haven't gotten
I mean,
to
you're
it.
just reading the text messages.
Yeah.
They speak for themselves.
And then the next question was, he'll understand, I'm sure. If not, he will. Do you see those texts?
Okay.
You did not review any of these texts beforehand?
Correct.
Okay. Now, on 5/5/20, do you see a text from Mr. DiLoretto to Ms. Chandler? Could you review that for a moment?
And what page are you on now?
Page 36. It's in red.
And I'll just object to the form speculation opinion regarding something he had no knowledge of at the time.
Well, that's the point of the question, Sheriff. Is why didn't
Okay,
you?
I've read paragraph 107.
Okay, so first of all, your testimony is that you believe that you should, as law enforcement, look at all evidence.
Correct.
Okay. So here, would you agree that there's a conversation between the alleged victim, Ms. Chandler, and this other person named Fred, who's telling her basically how to respond to why there was a delay in reporting?
I have
Form
no
speculation.
opinion on what was done and not done. Once again, all this information is turned in to the detectives, to the prosecutors. It's their responsibility and obligation to review the documents.
Okay.
I haven't been asked to review anything, nor am I prepared to review anything or give you my opinion at this point.
Well, the question is, you're the sheriff, right? and you have a deputy underneath you that you assign to this case at some point.
Okay,
Okay, that deputy has a duty and obligation to look at all the evidence.
correct.
So I'm asking you, as the sheriff, looking at this evidence, does it cause you any concern?
I'm
Objection
not
form.
prepared, once again, to give you my opinion hastily while we sit here today, you know, in this badgering that I'm receiving, sir.
Okay.
So if you got a complaint against the case officer, then there's a step and a process to do so.
And we're
And
in
it will
s-
be evaluated at that point
Sir,
if you let me finish,
well,
sir, out of
We're in
respect.
the middle of a lawsuit against your office.
I understand, but I am
against you.
speaking, and there is respect to be had here,
Go
Counselor.
ahead, say whatever you want to say.
I'm done.
Okay, so the question is this. Tell them the reason you've hesitated to report it, quote unquote, his influence in the community, but the sleepless night and shitty dreams, along with wanting to prevent this from happening to others, prompted reporting it now. You see that cue?
Okay.
Okay. Now, as a law enforcement officer, you would agree that you would want to know any conversations that the alleged victim had about the incident with others.
Form, speculation.
I mean, isn't that part of your investigation you just told us about?
I have no opinion, sir.
But
Hold on. You haven't established that he investigated anything.
I'm getting there.
Okay.
Okay.
I think you should get there first, Val.
Well, okay, simple as this.
I mean, you're asking him to speculate and give opinions about investigations in general, and in particular, an investigation that he had nothing to do with.
Well, that's his opinion. He had nothing to do with it. Okay, that's why we're here. That's why you're sued individually.
He's already said he didn't.
And
read
it's your
any of
duty.
these.
It's your duty to prove, sir.
I did not. I'm not saying he read it. I'm not saying you read. Whether you read it or not, that's your prerogative. Okay, you do what
This
you
is a
want.
conversation I had nothing to do with.
I'm not saying you had anything to do with the conversation. What I'm asking you, the first question is, obviously you didn't look at this conversation at any point.
Correct.
Okay. And secondly, you would agree, though, that your deputy should probably look at conversations that the alleged victim has about the crime.
Form.
What I will say again is that all documentation such as this needs to be presented to the state attorney's office for review.
But what about also to your deputies? Don't they have an obligation to review it?
Once
Form,
again,
argumentative. You haven't established that he knows he didn't look at it. I don't understand where you're going.
Okay, so for example, I'll ask you this. Detective Gonzalez gave us his testimony 3 or 4 weeks ago. He stated he met with you personally on this case and reviewed the evidence. Is that true or not?
we correct to a point. We're talking 30,000 foot level review. I don't have the time to get into the specifics of this case. I don't have the time to read what you're asking me to give my opinion on right now. He just basically comes in and tells me this case is moving forward. He had done this, he had done that. They're presented to the state attorney. We're talking less than 10 minutes, and he's gone.
So your first meeting with Detective Gonzalez was about what topic?
Well, I don't really recall. I mean, what normally happens in these type of situations is the investigator that gets assigned will come and brief me, or their supervisor will, 2 or 3 times as this case moves forward. And once again, those 5-10 minute briefings, just so I'm aware of what's going on, and that's normally what happens.
Okay, so that's I agree, that's normally what happens, but you've told us in this case, for example, you called Dr. Khan personally. Is that fair to say?
After one of those briefings had been had.
Okay, so I'm going to show you what we'll mark as Exhibit 6, and we'll come back to these other questions in a moment. Have you look at Exhibit 6. These are phone records. Do you recall making an actual call to Dr. Khan on May 29, 2020 in the presence of Detective Gonzalez?
No, sir.
Okay. You can't recall making this call?
No, sir.
Okay. Now, is your phone number 863-634, and it says 065, and it's list. That your phone number?
That 0650 is.
Okay.
I'm just going to object to the authenticity of this document.
It's not being introduced in a trial. We're just using it to refresh a recollection right now. Okay, so we got Exhibit 6. Now, there's an incoming call. And you agree that that's your phone number. Now, and I really appreciate if you would not make loud comments while I'm trying to ask questions. Thank you, Ms. Gisa. So, Detective Gonzalez told us he sat down with you in his office and you together called Dr. Khan. Can you independently recall making a call?
No, sir.
Now, earlier in today's deposition, you told me that you called Dr. Khan to tell him he was going to be arrested. Do you recall that?
Yes, sir.
So you do recall making the call.
Well, I don't, through the course of this investigation, I recall the fact that out of one of the briefings that I had with Detective Gonzalez, the warrants were going to be issued for Dr. Khan. So out of friendship and courtesy and what I normally do as a general practice is call folks that I know that I'm friends with and let them know, come turn yourself in. There's a warrant, so an officer does not go to his business and embarrass him any more than what has to be done.
Okay. So you're saying that's the reason you decided to call?
More than likely, yes, sir.
Okay. And you don't know how long you talked to him on the phone for?
I don't have it, but I have no recollection, sir.
Okay. And did you recall making a call then to Dr. Khan on September 24th, 2020? Look down at the record.
Based on everything that we've been through on this case and what's been alleged and allegated and made up and twisted or whatever, I do recall that there was a newspaper article that was written and submitted in the local paper. Something was said that I did not like that came from Dr. Khan, and I called Dr. Khan and voiced my dislike about what was stated in the paper by him.
Now, you know that Dr. Khan was charged with 2 crimes at that point.
Correct.
And you knew he was represented by a lawyer.
Correct.
And you knew that at that point, proceedings had been commenced against him by the Department of Health.
No, sir.
Okay, we'll get back to that in a minute. You still felt it was appropriate to talk to a represented person on the phone?
Form.
I wasn't asking him any questions about the case. I considered him a friend, not a defendant at that point.
Okay, but he was a defendant.
He was a friend.
But he was a defendant
He was
as
first
well.
a friend.
But he was a defendant in 2 cases that your office was
He
prosecuting.
was more a friend than a defendant, sir.
Okay, fine. But your office, you agree, deputies in your office were investigating him for crimes.
Correct.
And he had been charged at this point with
Correct.
crimes.
Correct.
And you knew that one of the consequences of being charged with a crime is you can lose your life or liberty, right?
Correct.
Okay. Your reputation's at stake.
I don't try cases across my desk. My reputation is not at stake. His reputation was at stake.
Right. You understood that very well at that moment.
Anybody does.
And you understood that he had a practice in Okeechobee County that was a very busy practice.
He was a doctor for 30 years. He and I been around long enough that he had clients, or patients, whatever you want to refer to them as, whom he knew their kids, he knew their parents, he knew their uncles and aunts, as I did in a small rural county. That's what we do.
Okay.
He and I had met many times talking about other people, trying to help them over the years. His group of doctors contributed to many, many fundraisers that I was involved in, that I headed up, that we done in our community. And at that point, which still is our community.
We're gonna go back to Exhibit 5, if you don't mind, sir, which should be in this file here. Go ahead and take that. Where we left off, we were talking about these text messages between you and Ms. Chandler. And it was your testimony that you said you didn't know of a Department of Health proceeding against Dr. Khan?
Correct.
Okay, so if we could go to, let's go to page 22 of this document for a moment.
And I'll just subject to the form in terms of the timeline, in terms of when he knew.
Okay, so you see this text message here?
Okay.
Okay. So, there was a text message. Could you review the text from you, from Ms. Chandler to you?
Okay.
Okay, so Mrs. Chandler basically tells you, first of all, I'm thankful they restricted his license for 8 months. Do you see that?
Okay.
So you knew his license was restricted?
I
Form.
didn't know.
Do you have any reason to believe Ms. Chandler was lying to you at the moment?
I could tell by my answer, my selective hearing, whatever she said, okay.
Okay.
You know.
And you told her she's doing the right thing,
Okay.
okay? And she actually says the reason it was lifted was because they said they couldn't confirm I was his patient at the time of the incident. Do you see that?
Okay.
Do you know at the time of this incident whether Ms. Chandler was Dr. Khan's patient or not?
No, sir.
You don't know.
I don't know.
Do you know whether she had ever told anyone that she was his patient?
I don't know.
Okay. I'm going to go to page 21 of this document, if you don't mind. Page 21 is right before 22, but it doesn't have a number. This text message here, first of all, you say trying to reach Javi, J-A-V-Y. Who's Javi?
How about Javi?
Javi. Who is that?
That's short for Javier.
Okay. Who's Javier?
Javier Gonzalez, that's the case investigator on this case.
Okay. So why were you trying to reach him?
She was asking me for an update.
Okay. So would agree you were having contact, at least at that moment, with Mr. Gonzalez?
Yes, sir, and I think it reflects how much I was really up on the case because I had to check with the investigator to figure out where the update was at.
Okay. So but you did figure out the update at some point?
I guess I did because I texted her back, as
Okay.
you can read in the text.
Right. You said Javi has been speaking with prosecutor at an interview scheduled with Dr. Khan on Wednesday, I believe.
Which
No.
I didn't know at the time. She had asked me the question, but I guess evidently Investigator Gonzalez had updated me on that.
And you said not sure why state won't sign warrant.
Okay?
And what was that based on?
Don't have a clue. I guess something Sahavi said.
Okay. Did you have any update meetings with Detective Gonzalez in your office about this case after the first time you made the call to Dr. Khan about warning him that he was going to be arrested?
I don't know that we had maybe 3 or 4, as I stated, I think earlier, updates on this case. All of which happened in my office, all of which are probably no more than 5 or 10 minutes, if that long. I don't recall specifically any dates, times, specifics.
Now, did you at some point have a discussion with Detective Gonzalez about these additional victims who've come forward?
I don't recall. I don't think we ever did.
Did you ever have a discussion with Miss Chandler about additional victims come forward?
I think we already talked about, and you showed me some text messages about that.
Let's go to page 11 of this exhibit.
Page 11.
Yes. So on page 11, now you said that the conversation needs to happen and you need to request a victim's advocate. What did you mean by that when you were talking to her?
Based on what I'm reading, not recalling exact conversation, but because of her questions that she has in regards to this case, it's not my case, it's not my place to give her legal advice. She needs to go to the victim's advocate, who is the appropriate person to walk her through and give her the information that she needs.
Okay. Now, you've given her legal advice in the past, however, you agree.
Form.
To a domestic situation, nothing as significant or severe as this.
Okay. Then if you turn to the next page, page 12. One last question. How will I know when he's been arrested? And your response was misdemeanor battery. Yes, they can be elevated. He'll be arrested tonight. So how did you know, where did you gather that information to be able to respond that way?
I can only assume, based on what I'm reading, that was probably in the same timeline as the call to Dr. Khan, one of the calls that I had to him, and he had already told me that he'd be in that evening.
The next page, on page 13, on July 6, 2020 at 12:53, you were receiving a text that says, Dina Campbell called last night. She met with Javier today. I think that makes 11. What was your response?
Nonchalantly, not feeding into what she is. I'm, okay.
What did you say?
I said, see the good you caused, proud of you.
Okay. So you're telling her, if I understand this, that you're proud of her having found 11 other victims, including
No, I
Dina
would say
Campbell?
that that's as you quoted before, having knowledge and experience in this, the struggles that these victims go through, and to stand up for herself is probably what I'm referring to, sir.
Well, but you also know in all your careers in law enforcement that the victims lie.
Form.
True, but in this case, they had already been supported by the state to file charges. So it's once again, it's a he said, she said. It's who sadly is more believable in all actuality in these cases.
Now, in this particular case, are you aware of a controlled call that was set up between Ms. Chandler and Dr. Khan?
Form, you can answer.
I do initially believe that there was initially the detective had done a control call to establish believability and probable cause, or facts in this case, which is normal practice. But I had nothing to do with the call.
Do you recall what the results of that controlled call were?
I never watched any video, no audio, never read any reports. I don't have a clue.
Okay. You don't know whether Dr. Khan related the incident as being consensual or not?
Form.
I don't know.
Okay. Would that matter to you?
Form.
Nothing honestly mattered. I don't give a shit about the case honestly at all. I mean, it's the facts are presented, and to the state just as any other case is done. Okay. And established from them. I have nothing to do with it.
Okay. Now, you did care about Miss Chandler, though, didn't you?
As I did about Dr. Khan.
Well, Dr. Khan had a trial. Do you recall an actual criminal trial that you testified in?
Vaguely.
Okay. Well, then let's help you refresh your recollection. This is Exhibit 7.
Thank you.
Okay, I'm showing you an excerpt of the transcript of a criminal trial, State of Florida versus Saeed Khan, that took place on the 10th day of August 2021. If you turn to the second page, there's a reference to you. It says direct examination by Mr. Reagan, page 175. So if we go to page 175, if you look at that for a moment. Turn to page 176. You were asked the question, do you know a Teresa Chandler? Can you look at your response?
Okay.
Okay. So the question was, do you know a Teresa Chandler? And then if you turn to page 177, you were asked, how do you define the relationship between you and Miss Bishop? And can you tell us what your answer was?
Professional and friends.
Okay. Then you were asked whether you recalled getting a text in May of 2020 from Miss Bishop. And your answer then was no?
Correct.
Okay. And then you were asked specifically about me, the text message, and your answer was vaguely recall the conversation. You see that?
Where at?
Bottom of page 177.
About me. It's about you?
No, read about page 177. It says, do you remember getting a text message from Miss Bishop? And your answer was vaguely recall that conversation. Do you see that?
Okay.
Okay. To this day, can you recall the conversation, the initial conversation?
Other than just what we've talked about between my counsel and then here this morning, vaguely, once again, remember any of this.
And then at the bottom of page 178, you were asked, but you do have a friendship with her, don't you? And the answer was with both parties, yes, sir.
Okay.
Okay. And then the question was, well, we'll go into Dr. Khan in a second, but with her, it's more than just one of the people from your county. You've worked with her on a board, you've communicated with her over several years, and you said your answer was no different than the relationship with your client, sir.
Okay.
Okay, you'd agree that that is not a correct statement.
Objection form asked and answered.
I don't think so.
And why not?
Because they're both friends of mine.
But were the relationships the same?
Never, no relationship's the same.
Okay. But you said that they were the same. You
Well,
said
I mean,
no
you know,
different
well,
than
I mean,
the
when you get specific, counselor, there's no, I'm friends with the counselor here and counselor there. They're different.
Okay.
I am friends with Miss Chandler.
Right.
So I'm helping her with this case as I'm friends with your client, counselor. Hence why I called him to save him any embarrassment, to let him come turn himself in, which I think you will agree is not general practice from a law enforcement officer that you've dealt with, let alone a sheriff.
Well, you did consider.
Is that correct, counselor?
Well, you consider.
Is that correct? I'm just asking a
Oh,
question.
I don't.
Yes
you
or
don't
no?
get, you don't get to ask me questions.
Oh, well, I mean, out of respect, I feel that, we would give that to each other.
Well, the thing is this: you did consider this case to be different than the typical case.
Form you can answer.
Yes, I agree with that. It was a high-profile case due to the clients.
And you knew Dr. Khan's reputation in the community was very important to him.
Form you can answer.
I think that both parties' representation and establishment in the community was very important.
And you also had no problem calling Dr. Khan even after you warned him about the arrest, to complain about, you said something in the paper,
Agree.
okay? And, you know, when you called him, he knew you were the sheriff. Obviously, you're the sheriff of Okeechobee County, right?
But I'm not calling him as a sheriff.
But you are the sheriff.
But I didn't have that sheriff hat on. I was calling him as that friend
Well, you called him-
that I'm alluding to.
Well, but you called him from a phone that the sheriff has.
Because you don't understand the position of a rural county sheriff, let alone a sheriff, period, sir.
Well, I think you'd agree the rules are the same for rural counties, for Palm Beach County, for Broward, for all counties, for law enforcement, right?
I think it's, you know, the rules, but as the world goes, I get involved in way more than I'd like to, you know, but that's what rural county sheriffs do.
So you're telling us you were heavily involved in this case?
Form.
More than I wanted to be. Hence why I called your client and told him that he had a warrant out of respect for our friendship.
And in the past, had you ever referred out a case involving somebody you knew very well to like an outside agency such as FDLE or another county?
If you're referring to conflicts, it's very seldom that we conflict out on a case. If I didn't investigate cases involving people that we knew, then we wouldn't be able to do our jobs. So what we do is we make sure there's no direct connection between the case agent doing the investigation in any time possible. There's just because it causes issues that we do not need, especially in cases such as this.
But in this case, there was direct connection between you and the case agent, Detective Gonzalez.
Which is not unusual.
Okay, and then Detective Gonzalez had direct connection with Ms. Chandler.
It's 2 months ago I put my very own son in my jail, sir. So if you really want to get down to particulars, we can go there. Okay? I mean, that's
not
just
what I'm
because, I mean,
asking.
I've got a job I've got to do, and I have done it very well. Hence the reputation that I have for 37 years of being the sheriff of Okeechobee County, and I stand by that. Once again, I stress, I did not grab the bosom of the lady your client did. Why we are here today.
But
had that not happened, we would not be here today.
But sir, the truth of the matter is you don't know whether he actually touched her.
I do believe he admitted that he did.
You don't know whether it was consensual or not.
That's
The
a
best of my
different issue.
recollection,
Form.
I think that I do.
Of course, because you're looking at it from the perspective of law enforcement.
No different than you are looking at the perspective, hence why we're here in this lawsuit today, sir.
Right, but isn't your job to gather the evidence?
Form. He wasn't
If I'm,
involved in the
if I'm the case
investigation.
agent, but I did not, that duty was passed along for somebody else to do.
Okay, so let's talk now about what you do as a case agent. Are we on number 8? Number 8, right? Yeah. Yeah, that's them in there, okay. I'm sorry? This is 8. This will be 8. This is, I think there's only one copy for you all to share, sorry. Sir, your office supplied us with policy 335 regarding criminal investigations. Are you familiar with that policy?
That doesn't apply to this case because it's dated December 6, 2023.
I'm asking questions. Thank you. I will
All right,
get
well,
there.
I just want to be on the record that it
Well,
postdates the incident. So.
I'm getting there. Are you familiar with policy 335?
Yes.
Okay. Now, it says revised date new. Was there a policy 335 before December 6, 2023?
Yes.
Well, what was that policy called?
I'm sure the same thing. This is just basically origination date here is just alluding to the revision date.
Okay. Do you know if there any of the revisions, what they were from the prior policy?
Without looking at it, no, sir.
Okay, let's go through these for a moment so I understand your answers earlier to how investigations are done. You'd agree that this is generally the policy of the Okeechobee County Sheriff's Office for criminal investigations, which is marked as Exhibit 8?
Correct.
Okay. And before we get into this, is the Okeechobee County Sheriff's Office accredited,
No,
and why not?
we're in the process.
Okay. How long have you been in the process for accreditation?
I'm due to get accredited officially June of this year.
And what does accreditation mean?
It's a standard, with the policies, the way we do our jobs, dotting your I's, crossing your T's, as the old analogy goes, having oversight from a group of inspectors, holding ourselves to a higher level.
Okay. Now, in this case, do you know who was assigned the investigation involving alleged victim Chandler? What deputy?
Detective Javier Gonzalez.
And do you know how he was assigned? Like whom assigned it to him, for example?
I think, if my memory is correct, it was an initial deputy's response, and then it goes to CID in the mornings, usually the following day, and then gets assigned from there.
And how long had you known Detective Gonzalez in May of 2020?
May of 2020?
Yes, when this was reported.
Probably 30 years.
Did you trust him?
Yes.
Okay. Did you consider him one of your most trusted deputies?
Well, he's a senior. He's been around like I have and bounced around the agency and was very versed.
Okay. So you had no problem with him being assigned to this investigation?
No, sir.
Okay. Now, when a person's assigned to an investigation, are they to, according to your policy on page 2, locate and obtain complete identification of all witnesses?
Correct.
Do you know if that was done in this case?
Assume that it was.
Okay, but do you know?
I don't know. No,
Okay.
sir.
Would you agree that, like in a case where the allegation is improper touch in a doctor's office, it would be prudent to go talk to witnesses at the doctor's office?
Form you can answer.
I feel you're asking me my opinion. As it relates to this policy, it spells out what should happen in the course of the investigation. The obligation is given to the case agent to do so, or the deputy that's investigating. If those steps are not followed, then I want us to know about it, being the leadership, and then we have a process that we look into and question whether all investigation, all avenues were done to the proper level or not.
So in this case, you're not sure whether Detective Gonzalez located and obtained complete identification of all witnesses?
Form you can answer.
I assume that he did because there was no complaints otherwise.
What about determining, under 2G, determining what information each victim and or witness knows through interviews? Is that another procedure that you have your deputies engage in for investigations?
Correct.
Form you can answer.
And do you know whether Detective Gonzalez did that in this particular case with regard to alleged victim Chandler?
Assume it was.
Okay. Now, are you familiar with another alleged victim named Campbell?
No, sir.
You're not familiar with any investigation with her?
No, sir. I know that there's many people that had alleged things. As I stated initially, I didn't read any reports. I didn't view any audios, videos, recordings. No, nothing on this case.
Okay. So what about Campbell? There was a reference to Campbell in one of the text messages, but you don't know who she is?
I think I know who she is, yes, just because she's an Okeechobee citizen.
Okay, so how do you know her?
Shit. Just from around town.
Okay, like around town, what do you mean by that?
Just around town, just from being a citizen in the county. I go to Publix to buy a gallon of milk. It takes me an hour and a half, sir.
Okay.
Because I know people. And
Okay.
people say, hey, you got a second. I don't hate to bother you, but let me ask you something. and I end up getting the same question that you asked me a while ago. Hey, I'm getting kicked out of my house. Landlord-tenant stuff, domestic stuff, theft stuff. My dog's barking, neighbor's dog's barking.
Okay. Under policy 2I, obtain statements from victims, witnesses, and suspects if possible following legal guidelines. What does that mean?
Form, you can answer.
It's self-explanatory, sir.
What do you mean following legal guidelines?
It's self-explanatory.
Is there some sort of legal training that give your deputies the legal guidelines to
The
use?
statute, Florida statute governs what criminal stuff do. You're a criminal counselor.
But I'm asking you, what does that mean?
Form,
Following statutes.
Okay. And you'd agree you should get statements from witnesses and suspects?
Form, you can answer.
Hence why it's in the policy.
Okay. And then 2 cases wholly and accurately record all pertinent information. Is that also required?
That's why
you
it's
can
in the
answer.
policy.
And do you have any information, or have you been able to review any of the reports involving Ms. Chandler in this case?
Form,
No.
asked and answered.
Do you know whether Detective Gonzalez ever went to Dr. Khan's office to interview witnesses?
No, sir.
Do you know whether there's a duty of your detectives to add facts that relate to exculpatory evidence?
Form, you can answer.
I would expect everything to be discovered, revealed, documented, good, bad, or indifferent.
Okay. So let's go back for a moment then to those text messages with, I believe they're exhibit 2. You can go back to 2, sir. I'm sorry, it's right over there. We'll go to page 34. So we stopped in the middle of questions regarding these. If you'll turn to page 38 of that exhibit, sir. It says
38?
38. It says 61 on the bottom.
All right.
Okay. So there's a conversation here between Ms. Chandler and this person, Fred DiLoretto. Could you read what it says? Listen, you have the right. Can you read that to us in red?
Listen, you just have to insist the primary reason for you're doing this is for your own sanity and peace of mind, as well as prevention of other victims. Otherwise, they'll try and portray you as someone trying to extort the San Negro he.
Okay. What does the term San Negro mean, if you know?
Form,
Well, it's
relevant.
racist.
Racist?
And uncalled for, wrong,
Okay.
something we shouldn't do.
Okay. So this is a victim, or someone telling the victim, referring to the alleged victim, Ms. Chandler, as the suspect being a San Negro.
Form.
Is that fair to say?
Good
Form.
assumption, yes, sir.
And then the word extort is there. What does the word extort mean to you?
I think we can
Form.
look it up in the dictionary, and
Based on your experience, 30-something years as a law enforcement officer, what do you know it to mean?
trying to get
Form.
something out of somebody for something.
Okay. And do you know if Ms. Chandler was trying to get something out of somebody for something?
No clue.
But you knew she had a civil lawyer, right?
Form.
Is that correct?
Okay.
What, is yes or no?
Okay. Yes.
Okay. Did you ever have discussions with her about her civil case?
No, sir.
None at all.
None.
What about the lawyers who were working on her civil case? Did you ever have conversations with
I
her
don't
about
even know who they are.
Let me finish my question. Do you ever have conversations with her about those lawyers?
No.
Okay. Now, this conversation that I've shown you is part of the evidence that Detective Gonzalez had. Is it your belief that that type of evidence should just be ignored?
Form.
I believe I've answered that question already.
I don't remember the answer, so maybe you can tell me again.
How about we take everything that's collected, good, bad, or indifferent, and submit it at one time to be as fair and just as we can?
Do you know if these text messages were ever submitted to the state attorney's office from Detective
No clue.
Gonzalez?
No clue.
Okay. You'd agree they should have been?
Form.
The assumption is made that all of them are.
Okay. And you'd agree that under the reporting policies that you have, that we've been reviewing, you're to include all facts and reports?
Form.
Correct.
Okay. And you don't know whether Detective Gonzalez did that in this case?
The assumption is made and have never heard anything to the contrary.
Okay. But you haven't read the complaint, have you, in this case?
No, sir.
Okay. Now, I want to talk to you about the charge of battery. Is that normally a charge that you actually make an arrest on? If it's simply a he said, she said with no injury or no witness?
Form.
It's a battery. It's just like any other criminal case, any criminal statute. The facts are the facts. Is there enough facts to substantiate and support that a crime had been committed?
Okay. And do you know, in the case of Miss Chandler, what facts were used to support a case being submitted against Dr. Khan?
Form.
Wasn't involved in the case to that level. Have no clue what was submitted or discussed.
Okay. And it's your testimony that during the meetings with Detective Gonzalez, you didn't discuss the evidence?
No, sir.
Okay. Did your agency have body-worn cameras at the time?
No, sir.
And are you in the process of trying to get body-worn cameras now?
No, sir.
Form.
You're not?
No, sir.
Did you ever tell the county commission you are?
No, sir. Because we have them now.
So you have them now?
Yes.
So when did you get them?
Earlier this year, late last year, probably with less than a year.
Okay. And you'd agree body-worn cameras are helpful because they can capture the true incident,
Correct.
Form.
but they can also be used against your deputies.
Form.
But they shouldn't be they shouldn't be doing anything to worry about that.
Okay. Now, in this case, were you also made aware of any text messages between a person named William Wallace and Miss Chandler?
Form. To the extent you learned that from us, do not answer that question.
Can you answer that? I'll strike the question and ask it this way. Do you know who William Wallace is?
We good, Counselor?
Well, you can say
Yeah,
who he is.
just the way he phrased the question, have you ever heard that? That would include me.
Okay.
So, you
Yes.
can answer the question.
Okay, who is William Wallace?
County judge.
And do you know whether William Wallace ever had any relationship with Miss Chandler?
No, sir.
Did you ever review any text messages between William Wallace and Miss Chandler?
Not until this deposition, the civil suit was filed.
And in reviewing those text messages, let's actually go to them if you don't mind. Exhibit 2.
Is in the back.
I'm gonna hold on one second. I'm gonna find it for you quickly. It's page 24 on the top, page 30 on the bottom. If that helps.
Okay.
Okay, so in the text downloads that were received, these text messages were in there. If you'll turn to page 32, did you know whether Mr. Wallace and Miss Chandler had any type of romantic relationship?
No, sir.
You didn't know, or they did not?
I no knowledge.
Okay.
Are you on 32, your docket entry number 32?
No, 26 at the top.
26.
26 or not 32 at the top.
Right. 26 at the top, 32 at the bottom.
Well, you just said 32.
I'm sorry, I meant 32 at the bottom.
26 of 38.
Yes.
Okay.
So you see these text messages. So there's a reference at the top. From Ms. Chandler to Mr. Wallace. Yes, I love that morphine. What does that refer to, if you know?
Have no
Form.
clue.
Huh?
Have no clue.
What is morphine?
Form.
Drug, that's a better question for the doc than me.
Okay, but as a law enforcement officer, you've dealt with morphine before, I assume.
Form.
Have you?
I haven't dealt with it, but yeah, it's something we arrest people for.
Okay, that's what I meant. So you're familiar that it's a scheduled drug that's illegal.
Okay.
Okay. In fact, you're completely against people having drugs like that, right?
Form.
Not completely against. I mean, there's people that have to have it.
Morphine?
Yes, sir.
You sure about that?
Doc?
If they're prescribed it, but yeah,
Yeah.
okay, go on.
Okay. What about people who have it without a prescription?
Form.
Then that's illegal.
And in fact, you know that. Well, let's go further down. There's a reference in this page as well to a music fest. Do you see that?
Okay.
In the middle of the page, there's a conversation between her and Mr. Wallace. This year at Music Fest, got you some more of that morphine.
Okay.
Also going to make certain my phone is fully charged. Get video will be there. Okay. Now, is there a morphine problem at the Music Fest?
Form.
You know those that's a 40,000 kids on 600 acres for 4 days. So there's probably every drug known to man and aliens that's there. I suspend my random drug test because there's so much marijuana smell and smoke that my folks will not pass the test.
But you do target people who are selling narcotics there, right?
I don't target people, but yes,
Or-
I've got to address those where there's people that's preying on them as far as stealing, that's sexual assaults and just that's when you got 40,000 people congregated in the area in my county, it's my duty to keep them safe.
Right.
So I'm dealing with a percent of people that's preying on them.
So you're
So
looking
it's
for people with drugs.
Yes, sir.
Okay. At the Music Fest.
Correct.
Okay. Now, you had no idea what this conversation was about drugs at the Music Fest.
No.
Okay. And but you do know that this person named Wallace, William Wallace, is also a judge.
Okay.
Is he a judge?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Is he the judge who handles arrest warrants?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Had you known this before you submitted the arrest warrant to Mr. Wallace, would you have chosen another judge?
I didn't submit the warrant.
Or your deputy, for example?
It's
Form.
not my place to judge this. If there was a speculation of that, then there's proper people that need to be made aware of that. The Florida Bar would probably be the first, just thinking off the top of my head, that governs y'all and what you do.
But it's a drug crime, supposedly.
Well, I mean,
Form.
you once again, as you're doing to me, you're speculating what this means and what the content and direction is.
Correct.
So whether your speculation is correct or whether it was just jokingly, I don't know. I wasn't involved in the conversation, Counselor.
But wouldn't you begin an investigation if you read that?
Form.
Or would you?
I mean, it's hard to say. I mean, you're asking me my opinion once again without me reviewing and being subjected to more than just a few text messages. I would want way more information to get before we get into that.
Right. So your point is, you're saying just looking at this, I can't tell what it means. I would investigate further.
Form.
I agree with that.
Okay. Likewise, the conversations about the word using extortion between DiLoretto and Chandler, you can't really draw a conclusion from that. You need to investigate more.
Form.
Yeah, I think we're in a society today, Counselor, that we have 5 minutes of video and we make an assumption based on a 5-second blip of it, and I don't think that that's fair to anybody.
No. We just necessarily can't believe what people just say, right?
Form.
Without investigating.
Right. Investigation is very important, you'd agree.
I agree. Hence why we need to investigate, we need to submit everything.
And in this particular case, you've agreed that you do have a policy that sets forth the way your office investigates cases.
Form.
Correct?
And that policy has specific details on what deputies should do for these investigations.
Form.
Correct.
Okay. Now, I'm going to go back to your policies, if you don't mind, which is Exhibit 8. Just find my copy here. On page 3 of your policy, if you wouldn't mind turning to page 3, follow-up investigations.
Okay.
You have a policy where you request that people do follow-up investigations,
Form.
Okay.
and is that and the policy says its purpose is to provide additional investigation in order to identify and effect the arrest of an offender. Is
Okay.
that correct?
Correct.
So, do you know whether Detective Gonzalez ever completed any follow-up investigation regarding the Chandler allegations?
Form.
No, sir.
Okay. And it's your testimony you never reviewed the control call video,
Correct.
and you don't know whether Dr. Khan said it was consensual or not. It's not part of your knowledge.
No knowledge.
But you still take the position that whether he said that or not, you believe Ms. Chandler.
Form.
I don't believe either. I don't care on either side. That was submitted to the state for the state to review.
Okay. And then there was a jury trial, obviously, in that case, right?
Form.
Correct.
Okay. And do you know what the results of the jury trial were?
Form.
I believe that the doc was exonerated.
Okay. Now, you testified that you weren't sure or you did not know of a Department of Health investigation.
Correct.
Okay. And did you ever talk to Detective Gonzalez about him reporting information to the Department of Health?
Form.
Not that I recall.
Did you ever talk to Detective Gonzalez about an allegation of additional victims?
No, sir. Not that I recall.
But you'd agree that you knew about them based upon your text messages with Ms. Chandler.
And what was in the paper? Yes, sir.
Okay, so you read stuff in the paper, and then you had text messages with Ms. Chandler.
Correct.
Okay. And now, are there any policies within the sheriff's office that prohibit deputies from investigating cases that involve friends or close family members?
I think we do have a little verbiage in there that, we expect them to, to conflict out. Exactly where that's at, I don't know.
Okay. So, you told us the situation with your son going to jail. Was that an investigation by your own office?
Yes, sir.
And you didn't conflict out?
No, sir.
Okay, and why not?
Because I didn't investigate it.
Who investigated it?
People within my agency.
Okay. So you don't believe that, even though you're the head of the agency, there's a conflict of interest if others within your agency investigate the case?
Form. You can answer.
Okay. When you became sheriff, were you required to attend a course that discussed conflicts of interest?
Oh yeah, there's a lot of, and we'll have to redo the shit just leaves me right now every year, the ethics training every year.
And what about, have you actually ever referred out a case? Okay.
Not since I don't, in my position today, I don't investigate. So I don't do reports. I tell people on a regular basis, if you're going to require an official report, then we've got I don't do that. I don't have the time, you know, there's a lot of things I can't do that.
So you pass it on to some deputy in your
Correct.
agency, right? But these deputies know you, right?
Yes, sir.
I mean, are you pretty close with your deputies?
Yes, sir.
Form.
You told us about the detective Gonzalez. What about this Carson Reno deputy? Do you know him?
Yes, sir.
And how well do you know him?
I watched him grow up.
Okay. And he was the first deputy to take this report from.
So I learned through our depositions and meetings with the counselors since the filing of the lawsuit.
Okay. And have you ever talked with Deputy Reno?
Bless you.
Wait, have you ever talked with, sorry.
That's good. Deputy Reno about his investigation, Miss Chandler?
No, sir.
Okay. At some point, after this case went out, you issued a press release. I'll show you. We'll mark this as Exhibit 9. I'll show you that.
Okay.
What prompted you to release this information?
Form. You can answer.
The text messages revealed in this lawsuit upset my girlfriend at the time I was dating, who is now my wife. And we, as we are today, struggling with my improper text messages that we are dealing with personally.
Okay.
And I felt at that time that my local knowledge of me running for sheriff may not happen because of my marriage being more important to me than my chair as sheriff.
Now, this was issued on June 17, 2023. Is it your testimony that as of that date you had reviewed these text messages that we've been referring to and talking to in this case?
Form.
No, I did not.
Then what were you referring to?
My wife had reviewed those text messages.
Okay. And how did she review them?
I think she had printed a copy of it from the lawsuit. I don't know if she'd done a public records request or she got it from the U.S. Attorney's Office.
Did she later have her own press release?
I think she did.
Okay.
Hold on. Let him finish. Form.
And what would you recall what she stated in that press release?
No, sir.
Okay, I'll show you Exhibit 10. I only have one copy, but just share it.
Okay.
And what was her response?
Form. You can
It's
answer.
depicted in your printout.
Tell me what it is.
Form.
It accounts for itself. You want me to read it?
Yeah, read what she said, what her statement is.
This is my personal business, has no bearing on the case, but I will read upon your request. I would appreciate it if everyone would allow us some privacy in this matter, she said.
And did you at some point decide to run for sheriff again?
Correct.
Okay.
We did. Let me correct myself. We did.
Who's we?
My wife and I.
Okay, but you're the one running.
My wife is running as well as I do, sir.
Right, but she's not running for sheriff.
She is running for sheriff. In a rural county, she is just as much the sheriff as I am. She shares me with the community way more than you have any clue.
Was that the situation with your prior wife?
Yes.
Okay. And what happened? Did you?
And there's another one in there too. This job takes so much of my time, and I'm on my third marriage, understanding these text messages were wrong when we were dating.
Okay.
You know, but this is a very tough job, just as the doctor's job does, just as y'all's job, any job, but especially my job.
And you'd agree that the text messages don't seem to be appropriate.
Form.
Nor have any bearing on this case.
Okay, so you say, but I'm just saying they just don't seem to be
So
appropriate.
you say.
And in fact, you were the person that Miss Chandler went to report the crime.
Form.
I wouldn't call it that. I would say that she reported the crime to Deputy Reno. She didn't report anything to me.
She didn't text you?
Form.
Yeah, we've already talked about that. But she was directed to, if she wanted to make a report, she needed to call a deputy.
Okay. And you had text messages with her before she sends that May 5th text message to you. Had she ever mentioned that Dr. Khan had done anything wrong to her during those prior text messages?
Form.
I think I've answered that before, sir.
No, I asked you, that's not what I asked you. I asked you whether the text messages show it. I'm asking whether she told you at any point.
I think you had asked me that earlier, but I don't recall.
Okay. So it's possible she may have brought it up to you
I'm
earlier?
not sure.
Okay. Do you regularly have phone conversations with Ms. Chandler, for example, in May of 2020?
I want to say we looked at those phone records, and there was a phone call that we've already talked about, and you asked me about that already, and didn't have on my phone number. It didn't have my full number on it.
Those were calls you made to Dr. Khan. I'm not talking about the calls you made to Dr. Khan directly. I'm talking
I
about.
want to say that was to Miss Chandler.
No, that was calls between you and Dr. Khan. If you want to look at the exhibit again, feel
Yes, sir.
free. It's Exhibit 6.
Oh, okay. Well, my apologies. I thought that was to Miss Chandler.
Did you regularly call Miss Chandler?
Form.
I don't know that I regularly called Miss Chandler. No, sir. I don't think that's correct.
Okay. And where did that go? Can we just take a break for a moment? I'm trying to put things together, so try and make it faster.
We're off the record, the time
Yes.
is 12:32 PM.